Well, welcome and thank you for joining me. Christmas morning 2021. I wish you all a safe and happy Christmas. If you're on your own, I hope you're happy and at peace with that. If you're with your family, I hope that your relationships strengthen and that you'll leave a legacy for each other behind of love and closeness that will be passed on to the next generation and go on and on and on. The reason why I talk about covert emotion. G'day, mate. We've just had a hiccup, a technical hiccup here. We're back on. But what I'm talking about is emotional output relative to input. You could be outputting more than what the person that you're with can intake, inhale. Your exhalation of spiritual, physical, emotional, and intellectual parts of yourself could be more than the inhalation of the person that you're in the relationship with. And this causes a situation where the person will want to withdraw. So basically, I think you've given too much of yourself to a person that hasn't needed that much of you. We need to realize in our need to want to give ourselves and be the best part of ourselves, we can overdo it. And what you'll find with covert emotional incest is it's flippancy between the parent and the child. There's no rules. You'll find there's no rules in or during the emotional, covert emotional incestual exchanges. I've found this incredible freedom that starts to spill between the two. And it's rich and deep. Doesn't mean it's legitimate, but it's rich and deep in this, what could you say, rebellious, careless interchange. There's things spilling everywhere. And this is where the senses of the partner of one of these people pick up, because you go, hang on a sec. Okay, I understand playfulness and I understand openness and I understand freedom. I understand, all that, how parents and children love different to everybody else. But this is different. This is on a completely different level. And one of the first signs that you can tell a covert emotional incest is underpinning this, or the foundation of this, is when the child has a sense of authority in these exchanges that go far beyond that a child should have. It'd be like a 13-year-old sitting in an X-rated stripper bar, as though it's normal and natural. You see this sometimes in some of the Hollywood movies, where a young kid is more adult than what it should be, and it portrays this child as being some kind of sort of hero, miniature hero, or something of this sort. But it's not. And this is where things start to go awry. Because what happens is the child then's been given an authority to cross over into adult space where it ought not to be. Now, for the most part, this will happen behind closed doors, privately, and that's why it's covert. It forms itself and feeds itself, for the most part, privately. But if you're in a... That's why you'll hear stories of women being married to men who often go and visit their mother on their own. And they leave the wife sitting at home, or to have the choice of doing something else themselves. But while the husband is visiting his mother, the wife, you'll find, or you'll hear this a lot, never goes. And there's a reason for this, and it's called covert emotional incest. For the most part, at least it will have some part in that. Excuse me. Now, depletion. When you, in your zealousness for your relationship, overfill the person that you're with, their zealousness for you depletes. Because they're full. You've given that person more of yourself than you should have. It doesn't make sense in so many ways, but it's true. And it contradicts a lot of the Christian teaching that I was taught as to do this or do that. There's a man that I see often walking along the waterfront here, and he'll tell me about how his wife's out with her girlfriends and he's done the ironing and he's got the dinner in the oven and he's done the vacuuming and the washing's in the washing machine ready for when he gets home to hang out. And meanwhile, his wife is out running around with her girlfriends. Well, he doesn't look like a happy man to me. I think he's just trying to find a way of filling in time, because something has definitely gone wrong in his relationship with that woman, but he's still feeding the problem. He's doing too much. He's taking away her responsibility, her input. It's causing her to deplete without her doing anything. Can you see that? It's taking her attention away from him, because there's no need for her to have any, because all his attention's on her. Now, back to sons visiting their mothers on their own, which is fair and legit, and the wife not ever being present. Well, for some cases there's no need for the wife to be present, but in other cases it's returning to, as the made man returning to, not just his maternal origin, but his covert incestual connection, where he'll get his little fill of lust off his mum, he'll get his ego stroked off mum, he'll take all his complaints about his wife and dump them on his mum, and she'll justify it all for him and make him feel better. And you know, the wife's done this, mum, and the wife's done that, and she don't do this and she don't do that, and mum will just sit there and, oh, that's okay, I'll make you a cup of tea, and or come and have a smoke, we'll sit and have a smoke together. You know, this kind of enabling of dysfunction, instead of saying to the husband, the son, go back and talk to your wife and come to a constructive agreement to sort this out. The problem with covert emotional incest is it's always on the side of sabotage. So most of the advice that's given works against the relationship in the form of good advice. And sometimes you can get good advice, but the spirit underneath the advice is dark. So it's just words. Covert emotional incest is very, very dark. And everybody ends up exhausted as a result of it. And this is the depletion. As soon as it starts, I'm telling you, your energy starts to fade, and it starts to fade fast, and you'll have emotions of confusion, distraction, panic, anxiety. Panic and anxiety are two major results of covert emotional incest. You'll find yourself on the defense. In fact, it can get so frantic. Have you ever thrown a piece of bread into a school of fish? You even become like that, where you just want to get this problem solved, but it ain't getting solved because it's a formation. Just let this train go past. It's a formation that's taken place long before you come along. It's a pattern of behavior that's formed long before you come along. So there's no solution for it. It's just a matter of working out a way of either putting up with it or navigating it. And for most women, it's just sending the husband to his mother on his own, accepting that whatever's going on there is up to them. And this can work in different combinations. But everybody ends up depleted, particularly between the son and the wife. The wife's also depleted because she's not getting any emotional return. Most of her return, or part of her return, is going to the parent. Well, and this is an awareness that the partners have of this. There's an output, emotional output going to the parent or the child that should be going to the partner of this parent or child that's practicing covert emotional incest. And the exhaustion that it causes, the frustration, confusion, and irritation that it causes is incomparable. You cannot compare it to any other form of these kind of things because it's so deeply emotionally it impacts so deeply and so harmfully that the trauma that comes out of it can take years to recover from. Because most people don't even know that it's covert emotional incest that they're dealing with. They wouldn't even know. Wouldn't have a clue. No idea. They just think there's either something dysfunctional with the relationship that they're having themselves, which there is, but it's not directly between the husband and the wife. It's between the husband and the mother, or the wife and the mother, or the father, or whatever the combination is. It's the covert emotional incest on the outside of the relationship that's causing the relationship to deplete and be harmed and disrupted and ultimately extinguished, because that's what depletion does. It just extinguishes in the end. If you haven't got enough wood on the fire and it starts to deplete, then eventually the fire goes out, doesn't it? It just exhausts. It's the same with covert emotional incest. You end up exhausted, confused, upset, sad, with horrible, deep regret, depressed, anxious, because you've depleted all avenues of resolve. Covert emotional incest doesn't have resolve. You've got to understand that. There is no resolve. Because if there was a resolve for covert emotional incest, then it wouldn't be there. Because it runs on unresolved. There's always some kind of unresolved behind covert emotional incest. And many of you who have suffered from these situations where you've gone, there's something wrong between my partner and their child, or my partner and their parent that's not maternal, it's not normal. Like in Psycho, the movie Psycho, Bates had a relationship with his mother that wasn't maternal, it was beyond maternal, it was twisted and lustful and horrible. That's covert emotional incest. There you go. I never thought of the movie Psycho, but there's a classic example of how just one way in which this dysfunction can manifest. But you'll see that the tendency was to do what pleased the mother, or to do what pleased the child, over and above any relationship that they were involved in. The person that gets into a relationship with a covert emotional incest practicing person will be harmed. One way or another, you will be harmed to some level or another. You are going to be harmed. That's just how it works. That's just how it is. So if you're wondering what happened, what's happening between these two people, because it's got no regard, you'll sense that it's got no regard for you, and you feel depleted, worn out, angry, bitter, you start to want to reach out to strangers. This is how a lot of affairs can take place. They're still connected to this person, but they're finding an emotional connection with somebody else, and they start having sex with that person and building a new relationship with that person. Meanwhile, the husband or the wife's just going on with their covert emotional incest relationship, clueless. And of course, the relationship dissolves and it's all just a waste of time. Don't worry, the parent will always end up with the child, because everything depletes. But covert emotional incest cannot deplete, because if it does, it won't be there. There'll be stages where there's big gaps, but these gaps in interactions only cause a stronger transmission of the emotions between the parent and the child when they interact again, when they come into contact again. And it's uglier and more distasteful. So you end up depleted, you get no sense, because covert emotional incest is a dysfunction of denial. It's a dysfunction of ignorance. It refuses to identify itself. It refuses to deal with itself. And it will not yield for anybody. It just goes on. I've seen people have terrible arguments out of their frustration, not knowing what's going on during or after a covert emotional incestual exchange between these people. The third party, one of the people that are grafted into this, a relationship with the parent of the child practicing covert emotional incest, can at times feel like they're going out of their mind because they're watching the partner work perfectly emotionally with the parent or the child, but only sending out drips and drabs and negligences towards them while they're prepared to give all of themselves. And that is demoralizing, to say the least. Horribly demoralizing, to say the least. Because if you're fully available yourself and you're only getting some kind of drip drop sufferance interchange from the person that you're with, and you don't know why, I'm telling you why. It's got to do with the parent-child covert emotional incest, which is stealing your source, your supply. Covert emotional incest will steal your supply and deplete it so that you're only getting dribs and drabs. That's the frustration. Merry Christmas to you. While you're only getting dribs and drabs and responding the way you are, with indignation and terrible cries for help that aren't being heard. It has no regard for anybody, because these people have no regard for themselves. Morning, mate. Have a good day today. Thank you. They have no regard for themselves, let alone anybody else. And that's how covert emotional incest works. So I hope you can understand the way in which emotions can be invested in the wrong ways. You can overinvest, therefore causing a withdrawal, trying to show how much you love this person while they're investing themselves into the parent of the child. Not at a maternal level, but as a partner-to-partner level. This is why you get robbed. And then this is why people come away from covert emotional incestual relationships so horribly damaged, and sometimes to the point where it's irreparable. I want to wish you a Merry Christmas today from Australia, the New South Wales Central Coast, a place called Incest, one of the most beautiful places in the world. I've lived in this valley all my life. I've surfed the best waves. I've ridden motorcycles on the best roads. I've paddled the best waters. I've spent time with the most beautiful women in the world. I've married them and had relationships with them. And I'm sharing you from my experiences. And please, I take no pride in it. Covert emotional incest has cost me an awful lot. Not just personally, but financially. And it's also taught me a lot. It's set me free to know that there is such a thing called that. I want to encourage you, if you have your DNA family, to look after it and protect it. You don't want to end up where I am. Constant sabotaged by the dysfunctions of broken families and broken relationships. It's worse than trying to put together a Rubik's Cube. It's very, very hard because these people are loving, but all their different dysfunctions and different ways in which they're culturalized and domestically formed are hard to integrate into or be a part of. But it's beautiful when it works, but it's horribly ugly when it doesn't. I hope your new year, this year, 2022, cannot be too distracted by this scamdemic. And I just pray that this year is much more prosperous than that last 2021, which was a horrible, horrible year. I'm Dr. Jason W. Morrison, theologist. I hope you'll join me in 2022. I know I'm not probably the best narrator around, but I can tell you that I'm teaching from experience, extensive experience, sober-minded, uninterrupted experience, spanning how long now? Over 40 years. Have a wonderful Christmas day. I thank you for the time that you've given me. Bye for now.